The cry in the wreckage asterisk. The sky over the broken moon was dark and cold. Fire still burned in the wreckage of the alien ship. It had crashed just hours ago after being caught in the crossfire of the Orion conflict soldiers moved through the area, scanning for survivors or weapons. But there was silence, no signal, no movement. Only twisted metal and smoke rising into the air. Jacob was not supposed to be there. He was a civilian, now a transport pilot who delivered food and supplies to mining colonies. He had just dropped crates when he saw the burning trail in the sky. Something in his gut told him to follow it. And now here he was walking through sharp metal pieces while his old boots crunched over glass and wires. He saw a large piece of the pod split in half like a cracked egg. Inside it was nothing, just black scorch marks. He turned away, ready to report nothing, when he heard a small sound, a cry, weak and soft. It wasn't human, but it wasn't a monster either. It was the kind of sound that pulled at something deep inside. Jacob moved fast, pushing debris aside. There, under a beam half covered in dust, was a tiny figure, barely the size of a toddler's skin, faint blue like the evening sky, with soft glowing patches around her neck. Her eyes were too big for her face and filled with fear. She tried to crawl away, but she was hurt and shaking. Rescue team behind him finally caught up. They looked at her, then at each other, then at Jacob. Weapons came out. One officer raised a scanner and frowned. She's not from any known registry. Unknown bioform, possibly dangerous. Could be a trap. Jacob didn't move. He didn't care what they said. He saw a child, not a weapon, not a threat, not an alien. She looked up at him, eyes full of tears. Her voice trembled. She reached out a hand and said one word, "Papa." Everyone froze. The other soldiers looked confused. Some backed away. One whispered she must be mimicking sounds she heard on human channels. But Jacob didn't believe that. Something in her voice felt real, like it came from pain, from hope. He knelt beside her, took off his jacket, wrapped it around her small body. She flinched at first, then leaned into him like she had always known him. The commanding officer stepped forward. "We can't take her with us. She could be a risk to the colony. We leave her here and notify the science team." Jacob stood up slowly, holding the little girl in his arms. His voice was calm but strong. "If you leave her, you leave me too." The others protested, called him foolish, said this wasn't his responsibility. But Jacob had already made his choice. He walked past them. The girl held tight to his neck, her tiny hand clutching the collar of his shirt. She didn't cry anymore. She just breathed slowly, like she was safe now back in his shuttle. Jacob made her a bed from blankets, gave her warm water. She drank carefully, like she had never tasted something so clean. He watched her and felt something strange in his chest, not fear, not confusion. It was something older, something human, like purpose. Activated the communicator. His friend on Earth appeared on the screen. "Hey Jacob, what's going on? You look like you just fought a war." Jacob turned the screen toward the sleeping alien child. "I think I just became a father." There was silence, then a deep breath. "You know they'll come after you, right? She's not going to be easy to protect." Jacob nodded slowly. "I don't care. She needs someone. She chose me." Outside the shuttle, the stars moved slowly. The war was still out there, the danger still real. But inside that ship, in that moment, there was peace, and the universe had just started writing anew. Chapter 1 that began not with weapons, but with the simple sound of a child calling someone Papa. The paperwork war. Jacob stood in front of the Earth Alliance immigration office, holding the alien girl close to his chest. Her blue skin was wrapped in his old jacket, and her head rested on his shoulder. She had not spoken much since that night, but whenever she looked at him, her eyes always searched his face, like he was the only safe thing in the world. Inside the building, a tall officer with a metal badge frowned as he read the form. He looked at the child, then back at Jacob, then back at the form. "You found her on Jupiter's moon." "Yes," Jacob said calmly. "She was alone, scared and hurt." The officer shook his head. "She's not human. She's not even from a registered species. No home planet listed, no DNA match in the galactic files. She is undocumented, unclaimed, and possibly dangerous. Jacob didn't flinch. She's a child. That's all that matters to me. The officer sighed and sent the form through to the next level. What followed was a long Cold War without weapons. Just paper, so many files, so many officials asking the same question in different ways. Why are you doing this? Why are you risking your citizenship? Why protect something that isn't human? Jacob answered the same every time. She needs me. He named her Lixie. It came from an old Earth word meaning light. She began to respond to it quickly like it had always been hers. She smiled when he called her that. She even tried to repeat it in her small voice. Sometimes she said, Lishi. Jacob laughed every time she got close. He got her a small room on his cargo ship, painted the walls with stars, put up soft lights that blinked like little planets. She drew pictures with crayon, always the same two shapes. One big with a beard and one small with blue skin, both holding hands under the stars. Peace didn't last. One morning Jacob received a message, red border around the screen, urgent. The Galactic Defense Ministry had flagged his adoption file. Lixie was labeled priority subject. Her body had unique biosigns never seen before, potential for bioenergy control, a rare and dangerous ability. They sent men to his ship, big men with hard eyes and quiet voices. They offered money. They offered new ships. They even offered protection if Jacob agreed to hand Lixie over. Jacob said no. Men returned with threats. Sought his license would be revoked, his ship impounded, his home seized, and still Jacob said no. News spread fast. One reporter leaked the footage of Lixie drawing stars and calling Jacob daddy. It hit the public feed. Millions saw it. And the galaxy did what it always does when something new appears. It split. Some called Jacob a hero, a man who believed love was stronger than blood. Others called him a traitor, a fool risking everyone for something that didn't belong. Protests began. Supporters started sending him toys and clothes. Haters sent threats and demands. Jacob ignored them all. He only cared about Lixie. Started to sense the tension. She stopped smiling. She didn't draw. She didn't speak. She just curled up in her bed and waited. One night she asked, "Did I make trouble, Papa?" Jacob's voice cracked. "No, baby. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Others just don't see it yet." He filed one last request, a final appeal for custody. It would go to the Galactic Tribunal, a place where few humans ever won cases. But Jacob had no other choice. The day of the hearing came. He wore his cleanest uniform. Lixie wore a little dress sent by a stranger from Earth. It had stars on it. She liked that. The courtroom was full of watchers. Ambassadors, judges, general scientists, all staring at the blue-skinned girl beside the human who refused to give her up. The judge asked, "Why should you be allowed to keep this child when she is not your blood, not your species, and not from any known nation?" Jacob didn't prepare a speech. He didn't quote laws. He just looked at Lixie, then back at the judge. "Because she chose me. She reached for me when no one else would come near, and I will not be the man who turned away from a child who called me Papa." There was silence. Even the cameras didn't move. Then Lixie stood on her small feet, walked to the center of the court, and placed her hand on Jacob's sure skin, glowed gently where it touched his soft light spread up his arm. Not burning, not harming, just warm, alive. The whole room watched. Some smiled. Some began to believe. The judge stared for a long moment, then said, "The court will review." Jacob left the room holding Lixie's hand. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing: no matter what they decided, he was not giving her up. The house with a secret asterisk. The court never gave a clear answer. They said more tests were needed, more time, more review. So Jacob left the system quietly. No headlines, no public goodbye. Just a quiet jump to the Mars farming colonies where no one asked questions if you kept your head down. The sky on Mars was red and the land dry, but to Lixie it felt like magic. She chased dust clouds, laughed when the wind blew her soft hair, and stared at the sky like it was speaking to her. Jacob built a small home near the edge of the valley, far from the central colony. Just enough power to run lights and heat. Just enough peace to raise a child away from scanners and soldiers. Lixie called it their cave. She decorated it with her star drawings Jacob cooked. Simple meals, and told her stories from Earth. She loved the one about the dog who learned to fly. She laughed every time he made the woofing sounds, but strange things started to happen, little things. At first Jacob thought he was just tired. He left. A broken tool on the table. Next morning it was fixed. The fuel tank that had been leaking for weeks, now sealed tight with no marks of repair. And Max the old husky had stopped limping after years of joint pain. Jacob watched silently. He knew it was Lixie. She never said anything, but when she touched something broken her skin shimmered softly. And when she smiled afterward, it was always small, like she knew she was doing something secret. One night the power went out. A dust storm hit the valley and cut the generator. Jacob moved to light a flare, but before he reached it, the whole house lit up with a soft glow. It wasn't electricity, it was Lixie, her skin bright as the stars in her drawings. She was standing in the center of the room, hands raised, eyes closed. Jacob stepped back, watching her, not with fear but awe. She opened her eyes slowly and looked at him. "I made the light come back, Papa." Jacob didn't know what to say. He just knelt beside her and held her close. The next morning, he contacted an old friend, someone who used to work in alien biology before the war. Her name was Dr. Kira Vone. She arrived in a dusty shuttle, looking older and more tired than Jacob remembered. But she smiled when she saw Lixie. Jacob explained everything. The repairs, the light, the healing. Kira examined. Lixie gently ran tests with quiet tools. After hours of silence, she finally sat down. "She's not dangerous, Jacob. Not in the way the officials fear. She doesn't destroy. She heals. Her species must have evolved to fix things, not break them. But if the wrong people find out what she can do, they will tear her apart trying to copy it." Jacob stared at Lixie, who was asleep on the couch hugging Max. "So what do we do?" Kira shook her head slowly. "You keep hiding her. You keep loving her. And you never let her near anyone who wants to use her." Weeks passed. Lixie kept learning. She spoke more words each day. She painted the walls with stars and moons, and one day drew a picture of herself with big wings, flying above Earth, holding Jacob's hand. He didn't ask what it meant. He just smiled, but far beyond Mars, a signal had already been sent. The DNA scan from the tribunal court had been copied by someone, a black market broker who saw her value not as a child, but as a product. And now someone else was coming. Not scientists, not soldiers, but hunters trained to take rare things without asking permission. Jacob had no idea. He was teaching Lixie how to plant tomatoes that morning. She held the seeds like they were precious stones. She looked up at him with wide eyes and asked, "Do they grow if I sing to them, Papa?" Jacob chuckled. "You can try," she sang in her soft alien voice. The sound so gentle, even the wind paused to listen. And in that moment, Jacob wished the whole universe could stop and stay like this forever. But in the sky behind the clouds of Mars, a black ship slipped into orbit with no ID, no signal, no mercy. They had found her, and they were already moving closer. The night they came. The wind outside was strong that night, blowing red dust across the empty Mars valley. Inside the house, Lixie was asleep, holding Max the husky like a pillow. Jacob was in the workshop, fixing a water pipe and humming softly. Everything felt calm, too calm. But far above the red sky, a silent ship hovered without lights. Its black surface absorbed all signals. It had no name, no code, no message. Just one mission: take the girl and vanish. They moved without sound, a team of 6, not soldiers, not police hunters. Their armor was tight, their eyes cold, their steps trained. They landed a few clicks away and moved through the dust like shadows back. In the house, Max suddenly stood up, ears raised. He let out a low growl. Jacob looked up, confused. Lixie sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "Papa, why is Max scared?" Jacob grabbed his old scanner. No alerts, no movement. But something felt wrong. Then the power died, total darkness. Jacob moved fast. He grabbed Lixie, wrapped her in his jacket, and pressed the emergency door switch. Nothing happened. Backup systems were jammed. He grabbed his old plasma cutter from the shelf, the same one he used during the war. He had buried it long ago, but never thrown it away. Now it felt like a part of his arm again. The first hunter stepped through the wall, literally through it. A cloaked device phased the material. He raised a dart gun and aimed at Jacob. Jacob didn't wait. He threw the cutter. It sliced the weapon clean from the man's hand. The room lit up with sparks. Lixie screamed. Max lunged. Chaos followed. Jacob fought hard. He was older, slower, but smarter. He used tight spaces, dark corners, sharp tools. He took out 2 of them before they reached the main hallway, but there were more, and they had numbers. Lixie tried to help. Her skin started to glow again. She held her hands up and whispered something in her alien tongue. The floor vibrated. One of the hunters fell unconscious without being touched, but the effort made her collapse. Her body was still too small, too young to handle so much power. One of the hunters reached her. Jacob shouted, "No!" But he was too far. The man lifted Lixie like a doll and ran toward the extraction point. Jacob chased him through the broken door out into the night. The sandstorm had started. Dust burned his eyes. He fired a flare into the air, not to call for help, but to blind the ship's sensors. It worked for a moment. The landing crew panicked. The ship lowered its shields. Jacob jumped and grabbed the edge of the cargo ramp as it lifted. He pulled himself up, bleeding, breathing heavy, and followed the sound of crying. Inside the dark hold, Lixie was in a cage. Too small, too cold. She saw him and reached out. "Papa." He tried to break the lock, but another man stepped forward. Bigger, different armor, not just a hunter, the commander. "You shouldn't be here, human," he said. "She belongs to the market now. She's rare, the only one with healing light. She's worth more than your ship, your planet, your life." Jacob stared at him, then at Lixie. She wasn't crying anymore. She was glowing brighter than ever, and her eyes were locked on Jacob's. "I can help," she whispered. "I can fix this." Then everything changed. A pulse spread from her chest. It passed through the cage, through the walls, through the hunter, through Jacob. It didn't burn. It didn't break. It healed. The commander screamed and dropped to his knees. Old scars on his face vanished. His metal arms sparked and fell off. He crawled away like a scared animal. The cage broke open. Lixie ran into Jacob's arms. He picked her up and didn't say a word. The ship systems shut down, doors unlocked, engines died. Lixie had touched the core of the ship's mind, and the ship had chosen her. Jacob walked back down the ramp into the sand, holding her tight. Max was waiting at the edge of the valley, covered in cuts, but alive. They disappeared into the storm, leaving the broken ship behind. The next morning, the hunters were gone. The ship melted from inside. No one claimed it. No one filed a report. Jacob didn't return to the colony. He went deeper into the desert, found an old bunker used during the war. There he waited, trained, prepared, because now he knew Lixie was more than rare. She was powerful. She was hunted. And she was his daughter, and next time he would be ready. The power they wanted. Asterisk. The old war bunker was quiet, except for the soft sound of tools clicking and metal being shaped. Jacob worked every morning before the sun rose on Mars. He built walls stronger than before. He set traps and scanners in every direction. He had learned that hiding was not enough. They would come again. Lexi sat on the floor, drawing with pieces of broken metal and chalk. She made pictures of stars and strange creatures with wings. Sometimes she drew Jacob with glowing hands. Sometimes she drew herself flying high above planets. One morning, she asked a question. "Papa, why do they want me?" Jacob looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because they don't understand you. They only see what you can do, not who you are." But even Jacob did not fully understand. He remembered the pulse she released, how it passed through him and the ship and healed everything. It was not like anything he had seen in his years of war, not a weapon, not tech, something deeper, living energy. He contacted Dr. Kira again. This time she came with more serious tools and old records from alien archives. Lixie sat still while they scanned her. She didn't cry or flinch. She trusted Jacob, and that was enough for her. Hours passed. Then Kira sat down with Jacob away from Lixie's ears. Her voice was low and filled with fear. "She's not just rare, Jacob. She's impossible. I found one mention of her kind in a destroyed colony report from 100 years ago. They were healers, yes, but also protectors. Each one connected to living things around them. When war came, they refused to fight. They healed both sides, so both sides killed them. They were wiped out. Jacob felt his chest tighten. All of them. Kira nodded slowly. Lixie might be the last. She's not a weapon, Jacob. She's hope. The next night Lixie had a dream. She woke up shaking, calling Jacob's name. He ran to her side and held her tight. She looked up at him with glowing tears. They're coming again, Papa. They found me again. Jacob checked the sensors. Nothing, no signals. But he believed her. He activated his backup plan. A shuttle hidden under the sand, a few clicks from the bunker. It was slow, but safe. He gave Lixie a bag of food, a small blanket, and her favorite drawing. I'm not going, she said. Her voice was firm. You have to. Jacob replied, I'll find you again, just like last time, but she didn't move. Instead, she walked to the center of the bunker and sat cross-legged. She placed her hands on the floor and closed her eyes. Jacob stepped back. The lights flickered. The walls hummed. Outside, the sand lifted into the air, as if pulled by a silent wind. Lixie's skin glowed brighter than ever before. Her voice was soft but full of power. She was speaking in a language Jacob didn't understand, but he felt it. The ground responded. The air changed. The machine's whisper read. Lixie opened her eyes. There's another like me, Papa. Not far. Jacob blinked. What do you mean, another? She nodded slowly. He's trapped. He's scared. He's waiting. Jacob didn't hesitate. He loaded supplies, checked weapons, fixed the shuttle's path. They left the bunker at sunrise. Lixie guided him with her senses. She felt the other one like a pull in her heart. After 2 days, they reached an old wreck deep inside a Martian canyon. It looked like a prison ship, half buried in stone. Lixie stepped forward and placed her hand on the metal. It melted under her touch. Inside, they found a small chamber. In it was another child. Thinner, weaker skin, pale blue, with dull eyes. He didn't speak. He just looked at Lixie and reached out a hand. She touched him, and in seconds his skin glowed. His eyes lit up, and he smiled. Jacob watched with wide eyes. 2 of them. Still alive, still here, but someone else was watching too. A drone above the canyon blinked once and sent a signal back to a dark place where powerful people made quiet plans. They didn't care about names or hearts or families. They only saw the value. 2 now instead of 1. Jacob felt it in his bones. The war had not ended. It had only changed, but this time he was not alone. Lixie looked at him and said, We have to protect him now. Jacob nodded and smiled. He had saved one. Now he would save them all, a father's last stand. The canyon air was heavy, like something was waiting to fall. Jacob watched the 2 alien children sitting beside each other. Lixie held the boy's hand and whispered soft words. He still didn't speak, but his body stopped shaking. His glow was growing stronger with each passing hour. Jacob kept scanning the sky. He knew they didn't have much time. The drone that spotted them had sent a signal. Someone out there had already locked onto their location. They didn't need days this time. They needed minutes. Jacob started preparing. He had 3 charges left from the war, old EMP mines. Rusted and dusty, but still useful. He placed them along the canyon walls, set them to go off when any ship came too close. He found a hidden cave behind the wreck where the children could hide. He brought food, water, and his last medkit. He gave Lixie a small come. If anything happens, you run and don't look back. She shook her head. No, Papa, we stay together. Jacob smiled but didn't argue. He knew she meant it, but he also knew she didn't understand the kind of people coming for them. Night, the stars flickered like they knew what was coming. Mac stayed close to Jacob's side, growling at every breeze. Then the silence broke. A low hum filled the sky. Not 1 ship. 3 black holes, wide wings, no lights, not military, private hunters with better tools and no rules. They dropped fast. EMP mines went off. 1 ship spun and crashed into the rocks. The others stayed steady. Smarter, faster, more careful than before. Jacob stood on top of the canyon wall holding an old rifle. His body was shaking, not from fear, but from knowing this might be the end. He spoke through the cum. You don't want to do this. "There are children here," a voice answered. "Not children, assets. You can't protect them." Jacob didn't reply. He fired. The fight began. One ship landed and released troops, 10 maybe more. They moved like shadows up the rocks with weapons drawn. Jacob fought hard. He hit targets, set traps, blocked paths. But there were too many. He was pushed back toward the cave, bleeding from his arm. Vision blurred. Max barked and leaped at a soldier. They both fell off the ledge. Jacob screamed. But he couldn't stop now. Inside the cave, Lixie looked at the boy. He was crying, shaking. She held his hand and said, "Remember who we are. We fix things." She stood, walked to the mouth of the cave, saw Jacob stumbling, and raised her hands. The light came again, but this time stronger, not just from her, from the boy too. They stood together side by side, like stars waking up. The soldiers paused, blinded by the glow. Their weapons jammed, their armor cracked. Jacob dropped to his knees. He watched as the light flowed through the canyon. It did not kill, it healed. It returned machines to dust and hate to silence. The ships rose into the air, but their engines failed. They floated, then dropped gently like feathers. The soldiers looked around, afraid. Some ran, some just sat down like they had forgotten why they came. Jacob looked at Lixie and the boy. They were breathing heavy, but standing tall. He whispered, "You did it." Lixie walked to him, fell into his arms, and cried. The boy sat beside Max, who was hurt but alive. He placed his glowing hand on the dog's side, and Max wagged his tail. Later that night, Jacob sent one final message to the Galactic Council. Not a plea, not a request, a warning. "If you come again, bring peace, or you will face something stronger than war. You will face children who still believe in love." Then he shut off the cum and held them both as the wind of Mars passed quietly over the canyon. The world sheet changed. 5 years passed since the canyon battle. 5 years since Jacob made his stand. The galaxy had not forgotten. Lixie was no longer a small child hiding behind Jacob's coat. She had grown taller, stronger. Her glow no longer flickered. It shimmered softly with calm and warmth. She could heal a broken bone with a whisper. She could bring light to a dying garden with a single touch. And beside her stood the boy she had saved. He spoke now. His name was Ren. He didn't remember his home or his parents, but he remembered the cold cell and the warmth of Lixie's hand. To him, she was not just a friend. She was hope. 2 of them traveled to different colonies. Quiet places first. Places hit by sickness or war. People were afraid. At first afraid of their blue skin, afraid of what they might be, but when Lixie touched a sick child and the fever vanished, when Ren placed his hand on cracked soil and green leaves rose from the ground, the fear changed. People cried, people believed. Jacob stayed close. He didn't speak to the news feeds or accept medals. He just watched from the shadows and made sure they were safe. Every time Lixie smiled at someone, he felt something inside him heal too. Like her light was not just outside, but inside him too. Then came the day the council invited her, not demanded, invited. A formal request to speak before the Galactic Union on Earth. They called her the last healer. Jacob didn't trust it, but Lixie looked at him and said, "Maybe they are finally ready to listen." He nodded slowly, but packed a weapon just in case. The chamber was huge. Leaders from every system sat in rows. Some cold, some curious, some still afraidly walked in with Ren beside her. She wore simple clothes, a small necklace made from a stone Jacob gave her. She looked at all of them, then raised her hand. "I am not a threat. I am not your tool. I am not alone anymore. I am someone who wants to fix what your wars have broken." A silence filled the room. Then whispers, then questions. One ambassador stood. "What do you want from us?" Lixie paused, looked toward Jacob and the crowd, then said, "Nothing. I already have what I need. I have a father who showed me kindness. I have a brother who holds my hand when I am scared. And I have light that you did not give me. But I will still share it with you." And with that she stepped forward, touched the floor, and let her light rise. It passed through the room, not burning, not pushing. Just warm. Old enemies looked at each other and remembered how to feel. Sick leaders stood straighter. Tired soldiers wept. Something changed that day. Something no weapon could ever do. Jacob stood outside the hall when she came out. She ran into his arms. He held her tight. Ren joined them, smiling wide. They didn't need to win a war. They just needed to remind the galaxy what peace looked like. Years later, Lixie and Ren opened the first Healer's Sanctuary, a place where all species could come without fear. No politics, no weapons, just healing. Jacob helped build it with his own hands. He lived there quietly, telling stories to new children, fixing machines with old tools, and every night before sleeping Lixie would visit him. She always said the same thing. "Thank you, Papa, for not walking away." One morning Jacob didn't wake up. He had passed peacefully in his sleep. The sky that day glowed a little brighter, and in the stars above the sanctuary, a single flare rose into the sky. Lixie stood beneath it, holding Ren's hand. The wind whispered through the trees, and the stars looked like they were smiling. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I will keep your light alive." And across the galaxy, people did remember. Not the battles, not the ships, but a man who chose to pick up a scared little alien child when no one else would. That one choice changed everything. The end.